Alrighty, and we're on. So I'm here with Voytek Szczepanik. Is that
That's right.
that
Very
correct?
good.
Yeah.
Very good.
And so Voytek and I actually we run into each other training at one of the gyms at Grappling Education, and funnily enough, Voytek also started an integrated combat center with Dave and Steve. So shout out to Dave and Steve. But we were just having a bit of a conversation about a whole bunch of different things, and I guess we might start with the topic of self-diagnosis or self-health and self-help, so to speak, because I think it was you were telling me quite an interesting story about how since you got your Aura ring a few years ago, it made you start thinking more about your sleep and focusing on that element to health, and then you also mentioned that it helped you to pick up on a heart issue.
Yeah. It's been a bit of a roller coaster ride for me over the last few weeks.
Yep.
It's all fresh.
Yep.
But yeah, going back to the Aura ring, I bought that back in 2018, I think, and it was really my obsession with sleep.
Yep.
That I really wanted to get a good understanding of what that meant.
So I'm just going to adjust that for you.
Sorry.
Yep.
And so I started really paying attention to the quality of my sleep.
Yep.
And over time, I've learned what really hurts it.
Yep.
And what helps it. And so the whole self-discovery of how your body works really sort of intrigued me for a long time. I became a little bit obsessed with numbers, and not because I wanted to break records or anything like that. I'm an amateur in everything I do mainly. But it was more so, I think, to just to better myself. And so I've kept numbers on myself, on my sleep, and my my training for a very long time. And so, yeah, fast forward 5 years, I've got a whole bunch of data. I've also been wearing a Whoop band just when I train. I think it's more convenient than the ring.
Yep.
And the data is very similar. It's not the same, but you keep the baseline and you just compare.
Yep.
And so fast forward, to this year, and I just started to pick up these weird numbers. I felt good. I didn't feel any different. Still trained. Actually, I trained a fair bit. Trained hard. I really wanted to improve my VO2 max after spending a fair bit of time in Europe over Christmas. So you come re-energized, and you've got all these grand plans to improve yourself. And so I really, really pushed myself. But the numbers were really just, I didn't understand why they were not consistent.
Yeah.
And it was only till recent when I just said no, this is not right. I've blamed the device. I've blamed everyone other than myself. And this sort of I said, well, I've got to get checked out. And so I did.
Yep.
And yeah, look, they picked up that I've got AFib, which is basically. No, that's okay. Thank you. Basically, irregular heart rhythm. And so what was happening was that my average heart rate just jumped up, and I couldn't work out why that was. But when you've got AFib, which is basically your heart just doesn't beat in a regular rhythm.
Yeah.
It beats slow and then beats fast. You can imagine that your average then becomes a different average than from a regular rhythm.
So it was higher, was it?
Yeah, so it was higher, but it was higher for like almost overnight, and it just didn't drop.
Yeah.
But I felt the same. I didn't feel out of breath. I didn't feel tired. There was no symptom. And so, when I spoke to the doctors, they said, well, typically heart conditions, the symptoms is too late. You either survive the heart issue or they pick it up, right? So so it's not unusual not to have any heart symptoms, right? So so from that perspective, obviously I'm not thrilled about having this, But
was this a condition that you've always had then, or is this something that's only developed more recently?
it's recent.
Yeah.
It's recent. So that's, yeah. So the longer you leave it, obviously, the worse it gets. And after a long time, your heart will wear out. But long term. So you want to get it fixed.
And how do they try and address something like that?
Yeah. So last week they had a go at fixing this. So basically they knock you out, and they zap you. They
electrocute your heart.
Yeah, electrocute your heart, and they try to reset the rhythm. So they did that 3 times. It got going once, but then it went back into to the irregular rhythm. So it wasn't successful, and there's reasons for that. Mainly because if it's left for a little bit too long, then the heart creates. I guess I'll use the word calluses inside, and the electrical pulses just follow the new paths that the irregular beat has created.
Yep.
And so, they can sort of bring it back into normal rhythm, but once those paths are sort of engraved into the heart, it just goes back. It just follows the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
So, so the next step is that they have to go in and get rid of them. So they just basically just burn them out or scrape them out.
Your calluses.
Yeah.
In the heart.
In the heart.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's the next step.
Is that a keyhole surgery or is that open heart?
No, they go through your vein.
Through your vein?
Yeah, through the arterial vein, through the leg up the heart, up to the heart.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Not sure I'm looking forward to that, but you're knocked out as well. So they just do it, and they try to sort of look at the heartbeat, see where the electrical impulses are, which way they're going, and they just try to sort of fix that. It's a reasonably sort of high success half rate of success. It's not guaranteed, obviously, but that's up next. So I'm looking forward to that, getting that done, and see how that plays out.
And I guess for you, in terms of like with the onset of this condition, like you've had the data, right? And you've got this data for say the last 5 years in terms of what your sleep's like, what your heart rate's been overnight, resting heart rate, all that sort of stuff, average beats per minute. Is there anything that you can think of that could have attributed to this condition?
Yeah, so look,
did you get sick with something?
Yeah, that's the frustrating thing about this, is because I'm not a typical case for this. Usually this develops when you're much older. Typical sort of things are high blood pressure.
Yep.
So over time, high blood pressure will sort of contribute to this. But again, typical patients are in their 70s. Heavy sort of drug and alcohol use, which is not something that I do. So that's not it. The other one is hereditary, which is something that potentially could have triggered it. I don't know anyone within my family that has it, but my mum passed away recently, so not recently, a few years ago. So I don't know whether she had that.
Yeah. Just bring that a bit closer to you. Yeah, thanks.
So I'm not sure whether she actually had that or not. So it's difficult. The doctors couldn't actually tell me why. I don't know whether it's more comforting to know why than it doesn't really resolve the problem. I guess if you knew why and there was a way of not stopping it, then I guess that's a preventative measure for others to know.
Yeah.
But for me, look, it's. I
think it's also one of those things though. If and so I was using this example with you before when I was talking about my mum, right? Like, so my mum has had some mental health problems in the past, and so the first time that she went into hospital, like the doctors completely missed one whole part of the diagnosis, I guess, was that because my mum had a thyroid issue many years ago, she actually had to have her thyroid killed, and they did that with a radioactive treatment. So she takes this tablet or whatever, and the radiation it's targeted towards the thyroid, and basically it kills the thyroid, and then she just urinates out the rest of the stuff or whatever. But one of the offsets of that is that then she has to take iodine every day for the rest of her life to supplement the iodine that her thyroid no longer produces. And so one of the things about that particular condition is that if you don't take the iodine, well, that could also lead to some other forms of hormone imbalance that can then lead to some of these mental health issues, right? And so when my mum sort of went off the rails, that was one of the things. She stopped taking all medication altogether. And so that sort of exacerbated the condition, right? And so without me thinking about it and recognizing that, hey, I feel like we've missed something here. Like, yeah, they've given her these mental health, like this medication that has helped to sort of cover the symptoms. But if she keeps regressing, there's something else that's still there, right? And so it's like, you can keep slapping the Band-Aids on it, but you sort of need to really work at, okay, how did we get to this point, and sort of unpack those layers and try and understand the history, because I feel like, as if any sort of problem, it's multifaceted, right? So there could be all these contributing factors, and so you've already said, okay, it's not these factors, but then for something to have happened, it's like I guess me using an example from my Oura Ring data, right? So I know that if I drink alcohol before I sleep, my heart rate will be higher, my resting heart rate will be higher, impacts my recovery. I know that if I eat a big meal before sleeping, that's obviously going to impact my resting heart rate as well. It also elevates your body temperature because your body's trying to process these things. So, you can see the data and you sort of go, okay, I can either just look at the data and go, oh, that was a bad night's sleep, or I can go, okay, I can take notes and go, okay, what did I do on that particular day that then led to this, right? And so, I can see on like it's funny when I look at my body temperature data, you can just scroll through and see exactly the moments I got sick because my body temperature just like skyrockets, right? And it's like, 2 degrees above normal, my normal resting body temperature. So, those sorts of things are I think are great to inform us, but we still need to put these inferences in about, okay, what could potentially have caused this? Because then that's the only way that you can sort of, it's like the old hypothesis testing, right? Come out with the hypothesis. Okay, what could have potentially done this? How would I address that if that was the cause? And you sort of just keep testing the hypotheses until you get the right result, and then you can test it again, and you test it again to see if that actually correlated to what the situation was.
100%. And I think the whole idea of having these devices on you is that you actually spend time to look into and take notice of things that are sort of a little bit off. I mean, alcohol's the obvious culprit of sleep. It destroys my sleep as well.
Yeah.
Like, just and the thing is the older you get, the worse it gets. It really does. A glass of wine, it just throws it off so much. So, so when you say that, you pay attention, I think that's very important. A lot of people get these devices and they just count the steps, which is fine. I think, it's good to move, and everyone's at a different sort of point in their life with their health and fitness, and you've got to start somewhere. So I'm not really sort of disrespecting that, but the devices these days are so good. They give you so much information, right? That it's actually a shame that people don't look into it a little bit more. And I feel very blessed. I know this is not. I'm not going to die tomorrow or anything like that. It's not. People are much, much worse off, and they get all sorts of horrible things happen to them. So relatively, I'm okay. But the biggest risk with this condition is actually stroke, right? So I could have easily had a stroke in the last a few months, easily. So. And that's how a lot of people end up having a stroke, because they've got this underlying condition, something that they're not aware of.
Yeah.
And as I said, with most heart conditions, it's too late. So, I've got to manage that a little bit with medication. But again, I'm not keen on having that long term. If there's ways to sort of come out of it and fix it, that's my objective.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at this and say, wow, how lucky am I that I was mindful enough to pick this up, and do something about it. But I think when you step back and you do lessons learned, for me the most intriguing part was my mindset of almost denial that it can't be me. It must be the device that's not working well.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. Like from you looking from the outside, you might be thinking, no, I mean, why not, right? But you turn up to training, you train, you run, you do all sorts of things, and you feel good. Why should it be me? Like, why is there something wrong with me? There has to be another reason for this. Maybe I should try this. Maybe I should just rest a bit. Maybe I'm just overdoing it. And as time goes on, you're coming up with all these different theories, but you're missing the obvious that, well, hang on, right? It actually could be something wrong with me. And so that to me was one of the biggest takes in life, that your mind plays tricks on you. Cognitive dissonance, they call it. You're in denial. You tricked yourself to think that there's nothing wrong with you, and this happens all the time. With politics, people just blindly follow whatever, because they're in this mindset. So I've thought about this more than anything, more than the condition and how that's impacting me right now. It's the fact that I didn't recognize that I fooled myself. And that bothered me. That actually still bothers me, because I'm trying to sort of put, steps or something in place so that doesn't happen again. Not health-wise, but just in any decision-making process where I'm sort of blinded by whatever my belief is at the moment.
Yeah. You've taken an assumption, right?
I did, and it could have been costly. We all make assumptions, and the hypothesis is you test it, right? But I'm a little bit. I don't want to use the word disappointed, but I'm a little bit sort of.
It eats away at you
a little bit, because I can't pinpoint why I did that.
Yeah.
My background is problem solving. I'm an engineer I've been trained as an engineer to solve problems. I manage risk. I manage complex infrastructure projects where decisions are made. You've got to think logically through the steps. And yet when it came down to my own health, right, and trying to sort of understand what's going on, I just simply ignored that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's common across most things. Whenever you learn any particular skill, or like, let's say whether it's a martial art or it's civil engineering as an example, the first day that you walk in, and I always talk about this, the steps to conscious competence, right? So there's 4 steps. The first step is that you don't know what you don't know. So that means you're unconsciously incompetent. I have no idea what the subject matter is. I have no idea what civil engineering is or jiu-jitsu is or whatever the case may be. So you don't know what you don't know. You start at this very low baseline. And then the second part of it then is realizing, wow, there is so much that I need to learn, right? So now you're consciously incompetent. I'm conscious that I'm shit house at whatever this is.
So
right?
much information to absorb. Yeah.
So much information to absorb. So that's the second step, right? And then you move into this phase where things start working, but you don't necessarily know exactly why. So that's where you get to this stage of unconscious competence. So it's like, you do a particular move and it's like, oh, that works. And it's like, okay, I'm going to keep doing that. Or it's like, okay, you try and solve a problem. You go, okay, if I apply this formula to that problem, it solves it. But you don't necessarily understand the why. You just, practicing that rote learning approach of going, okay, this is the formula that I need to use to calculate X, Y, Z, or this is the move that I need to use in this particular position to get to where I want to get to. And then, everybody at some point will hit this point of what we call conscious competence, where it's like, okay, I know exactly what I want to achieve and I know exactly how I'm going to get there. So, it could be a sequence of moves that you've practiced, to the nth degree. You've drilled it a million times, and then it's like, okay, when I get caught in this position, I'm going to go for this. My opponent's going to give me this or this reaction, and I'm going to do this and this.
So it's pattern recognition. It's
pattern
like in chess,
right?
Like people see patterns.
Yeah, and it's the same thing, when you learn any subject matter. When you get to that point, it's like when you're doing maths, right? The formulas, how to execute them, in which particular scenarios you need to use it to solve whatever layer that you're doing. And then what happens, though, is that once we get to that point of conscious competence, we all make this mistake where we go, oh yeah, I know how to do this. But the very statement of saying, I know how to do something, is assuming that the parameters are going to be exactly the same as the last time you solved a similar equation.
Yeah, that's true.
Or a similar problem.
Become complacent.
That's complacency.
Yeah.
Right. So we take the same approach with ourselves, because like every day, you know, we look in the mirror. Oh, I look the same as yesterday. You know, we don't notice how much we've aged over the years. And likewise, when we look at our kids, it's like, you know, when you look at your own kids, you don't realize how fast they're growing up. It's only when you might have some time away from them and you come back and it's like, wow, you've grown so much. Or you have something that changes your frame of reference. And that's because every day we're making assumptions, right? We're making assumptions that the things that I did yesterday will be effective today. And in doing so, it's like, okay, everybody takes it for granted that, you know, they might be in good health today. And it's like, okay, I had a bad day today, but there's nothing really wrong. I don't think there's a major issue.
Yeah.
Right. And we just sort of continue on and until something becomes a major issue.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, I think everybody makes that mistake of we assume too much, you know.
Yeah. There's a saying about that, you know, the assumption.
Yeah. Makes an ass out of you and me.
That's correct. Look, I apply something very similar at work, and it's called the Rumsfeld principle. I don't know whether you remember when America went into Iraq, they had these weapons of mass destruction. So they had known knowns, so they knew about stuff. The known unknowns, they knew there was something there, but they didn't know where it was, right?
Yep.
And then the unknown unknowns, which is we don't know about the things that we don't know about, right? And so I use that a lot at work for certain sort of certain things because it just reminds me that there's always this latent risk that you can't mitigate, but you just have to be mindful of. And I guess this is why, just coming back, this is why I'm a little bit sort of frustrated with the fact that, you know, I'm constantly sort of using my, you know, my skills and my experience to solve problems, and I missed my I didn't miss it. I eventually picked it up, right? But it
delayed it a little.
Delayed it a little bit, right? Where it should have become obvious. And maybe I'm a little bit hard on myself, and it's always different looking sort of outside in. If there was someone else, they may have said, "Hey, listen, just go and check yourself out." Right?
Yeah.
And in fact, there was one person that prompted me to do that very quietly. And this is another massive lesson learned for me. It's very difficult to say to someone there might be something wrong with you, especially when you're not a close friend. You know, you might be you know, you might train with them, or you know, you might see them. You might be a work colleague, right? But to say to someone, look, you know, there might be something wrong with you. Not maybe in those words, but maybe you should go
get some help. Yeah,
get some help. Yeah, it's not easy, and people shy away from that for a lot of reasons, and I get that. But you know, are you okay days is one of those things that sort of I guess brings to mind that's really something that we should be doing, because you know, this complacency that we live in, right? Someone else doesn't obviously live with that complacency, and they pick it up straight away. You know, we talked about your superpower of just coming into a room and just spotting a dot or something. You know, there's a leak or something like that, right? And I've been living in the house, and you've spotted something that I haven't seen.
So for people that don't know what we're talking about, so I use Voytek's bathroom, and then when I flushed the toilet, I've noticed there was some water dripping on the back of the toilet. It's only very slight, but I was like, hey, Voytek, not sure if you know, because you know, you live in this house, and I don't mean to, like, I'm not trying to pick on you and say, hey, you know, go fix this. It's just in case you don't know, but there's water there. So
but that's the point. Yeah. Like, that's the point. You sort of come in and you're not in this environment every day, or you don't live with that issue every day. And so I think it's very important. That's the positive takeaway that I take from this, is if you do see something, obviously think about it before you say anything, because it's you've got to be careful. But I think it's, you know, there's ways of saying things, and it could help someone, right? And it's a massive lessons learned for me. There's two things. One is this sort of complacency and this cognitive dissonance that we get into, where, you know, we're trapped in a thought process we can't get out of because of the potential negative outcome.
Ramifications.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the other one, obvious, is actually calling things out when you see that potentially that there might be an issue. So yeah, like it's fantastic, and I thrive on this. Like we all learn every day, and again, I'm not thrilled about having this condition, but you move on and you learn from it. So that they're my positive takes on this, and yeah.
All right. Well, let's sort of wind it all back, because I'm sort of curious about your upbringing and where you grew up. Because I remember you actually telling me this thing about I think when you were 9 or something, you had a gun pointed at you.
Yeah.
So let's go back before we get to that story. Okay. So where did you grow up first?
Okay. So I was born in Poland.
Yep.
Both my parents are Polish. I born in a relatively small town north of Krakow. Most people know Krakow and Warsaw if they think of Poland. So 2-hour drive north of Krakow, about 300,000 people, so maybe the size of, I don't know, Wollongong or something like that, maybe.
Yes.
Not a massive town. Grew up there, went to primary school, I think year 1 or 2. And at that time, Poland and most other Eastern European countries were obviously under the influence of Soviet Union communism. And it was around about 81 when my parents and 2 other families plus my uncle decided to pack up and leave. So that's a story in itself, because it was very difficult to get a passport at that time, especially to a non-Soviet affiliated country. So we had to do it basically just by not telling one. Packed our bags and left everything. So just suitcases, I guess. And only 2 people knew about it, my auntie and my grandmother. And I wasn't allowed to tell anyone. But my parents told me to say bye to your friends, which was a little bit like when you think back when you're a kid, you're told this information that you're going, not coming back. Go say goodbye to your friends, but don't tell them why. So that was a bit of I guess, an interesting decision on behalf of my parents, because they wanted to do the right thing by me. But I couldn't process that, and you can only imagine your friends asking you why you're saying goodbye. Why can't you tell me? Like, where are you going? It's sort of a natural thing to ask at that age. So I can't remember how I dealt with it, but I did as I was told, and we just basically left. Packed our suitcases, left everything, and fled, and went to Paris, and then my parents made the biggest mistake of their lives. Not that's changed the course of where I am. They made a decision to go to Austria from Paris, from France.
Yeah.
Seems trivial, but the way the immigration system worked back then is that when you landed in a Western country, you had to apply for political asylum then and there. So they didn't do that. They were given bad advice, and it wasn't intentional. It was just ill-informed, and they decided to go to Austria from France. And when we arrived there, they basically said, we can't do anything for you because you've come from France, not directly from Poland.
Wow.
So typically what happened then, because of the Cold War, if you came from a communist country, you were granted refugee status straight away.
Yep.
And so what would have happened in France, we would have been put in a hostel. We would have been given, allowances, healthcare, food, and then we would have applied either to stay there or move abroad. So like America, Canada, we're taking refugees in Australia.
Yep.
And you just wait, and when your turn comes, you get settled.
Yep.
So it's pretty. I mean, it's stressful, but it's pretty sort of. It was well organised, well intended. Refugees were looked after, and I just want to make a point that the way we deal with that right now is totally different and very, very inhumane. I have to say, the way
The detention thing.
yeah. So that sort of that's hard to talk about, because what I went through, even it wasn't that good. It's nowhere near the way people are treated right now. And so, but anyway, it's sidetracking a little bit. Anyway, so we went to Austria. The officials there back there said, you can't stay here. You've got to go back. And they just kicked us out. So there was 2 families. It was like me and my sister was 3 back then, and other young kids. And they just kicked us out on the street. Obviously, no one spoke German. So I don't know how we ended up, but a priest picked us up and took us to a village where there was a vacant 300-year-old house, no hot water, nothing.
Yeah.
He said, "We'll just stay here for a while until we work out what to do with you guys."
Yeah.
So, interesting enough, about a walking distance from where we were, there was a refugee centre there where a lot of Polish people were. Essentially, it was like a hostel, restaurants, hairdressers, doctors, and they used to come over and just bring us food and stuff like that, because no money, no anything. So, cut a long story short, we sort of stayed there technically legally until we somehow got processed. But, the memories I've got of that time is that we actually were on a point of starvation because there was no food, right? My parents, especially, they lost so much weight. All the money that they've made, if any, went to to feeding the kids. So we were sort of bread and jam. And I've told this story to my kids many times, but my dad somehow managed to save some money because we were actually dodging paying tickets for the tram. I'm sort of jumping a little bit, but my mum really wanted me to get my first communion before I came to Australia. Right?
Okay.
It was at that age where all the kids back in Poland were getting their first communion. She was pretty religious, and she didn't know anything about where we were going. So she goes, let's tick that one off just in case, So we had to go. I had to get some scripture lessons in wherever, and so the little money that we had to get used for transport. And my dad never bought tickets on the tram, and so he saved that money. We sort of dodged it a bit, and then he bought a bag of potatoes for everyone. That was the reward.
Yeah.
And so towards the end, he cooked these potatoes, and then he drank the water from the potatoes because he was so deprived. Yeah, I just remember this like it was yesterday. But anyway, so I got my I went to communion. I was the only kid. My mum cried because I was the only kid. Like, to me, I didn't really care.
Yeah.
And so the dilemma was, where to from here, because Austria wouldn't take us, but they decided to get us processed. And so we had 3 options. We had Canada, America, and Australia, right? My dad always wanted to go to Canada. Okay. Like, he always wanted to live in Canada. My uncle wanted to go to America. The other 2 families, one of them went to America because they had relatives there, and the other one came here with us. But the choice was, there was no choice because we were in such a difficult situation. Australia was processing refugees quicker than the other 2. So because we wanted to get out of that situation, my parents chose to come to Australia. Knew nothing of the country, nothing. Like, back then in Poland, there was no, you can imagine TV shows were all Soviet and Polish propaganda. They knew this place existed, but they knew nothing. So we ended up here because of that.
Wow.
So I've often thought about how this would have panned out if they didn't make that decision back in France, Paris.
Mm.
And obviously there's a whole heap of scenarios, but my thoughts are that the most likely scenario would have been that we would have stayed in France, Europe, right?
Yep.
So I would have become a French citizen.
Yep.
Like, it's weird to think about it like that. Spoke French, right? And then most likely we probably would have ended up going back to Poland at one point in time after the Cold War finished and the war came down in 1990, whatever it was, because we left in 81.
Yep.
So it was only 9 years, right? So more than likely we would have had a French citizenship, and then we would have possibly gone back to Poland and travelled back and forth maybe. So my life would have been
Completely different.
Completely different.
Yeah.
It's insane to think about how, again, these decision points totally change your change your life. I mean, you can argue about whether that was really a decision or was always sort of, it's always, people believe you've got no
determinism.
Yeah. So I don't want to get into that because I don't really know, but it's quite interesting. So yeah, that's how I ended up in Australia. And so we ended up in Sydney, got put into a hostel here. There was a place at close to Coogee. I can't remember what it was now. There's army barracks there right now. We stayed there for a few months. I went to school, no word of English, nothing. And then started school here, primary school, moved East Lakes, stayed there for a little bit, and then sort of moved into the St. George area, Rockdale, when I was probably in year 6, I don't know, about 10 or 11, something like that.
Yeah.
And stayed in this area. My parents eventually moved out west when I was in my mid-20s, but I stayed here all this life. So yeah, we talked about anxiety and all that sort of stuff. And again, looking back at my life, I didn't really have a good upbringing in terms of school. Bullying was, like, when I look back, it was pretty bad.
So okay, hang on, because we skipped over the gun story. So I want to go back. I want to circle back to the gun story.
And no, that's I've got to do the gun story. Yeah, yeah. Look, so we went on a holiday once with my parents up to the Baltic Sea. So we travelled up there with another family, and where the holiday place was, there was a Russian air base.
Mm-hmm.
It was a Polish air base, but obviously Russians had the Soviets back then had control, and it was pretty close to the beach. So all you had to do is go up this little dune, like sand dune, and you could see the MiGs take off.
Wow!
Like, you could see them pretty close. So it's sort of, imagine, coming up to a fence at Kingsford Airport, and you can see like fighter jets. So my father said, well, let's go and have a look closer, right? And so we went up this sand dune, still within the perimeter of the public beach. It was myself, my father, and I can't remember who was there as well. And we're just looking at these MiGs take off. It was just pretty impressive, And then literally within minutes, a soldier came up to the fence, right? And he started to sort of gesture to wave us off. So you've got to move on. And probably should have moved on, to be honest. But my father goes, no, this is my country. It's got really sort of patriotic.
Yeah.
I'm allowed to be here. I'm not trespassing.
Yeah.
I'm just watching, right? This is what he's sort of thinking and saying. He's not saying it to that guy because he's still at a fair distance. And he says, we're not going anywhere. Right? This is with his child, right? It's a bit crazy when you think about it. You've got kids as well. When you think about it like that, it's sort of like, well, maybe we should have moved on. But anyway, so then my dad goes, no, we're not going anywhere. So anyway, this guy takes his gun out, right, and fires a shot up into the air, right? And now it's like saying, no, you've got to move on. And I don't know how long it was before he fired the shot, and then he directed the gun towards us. I don't know whether we would have moved on, but it was so quick, but we didn't. And so he directed the gun towards us, and he just stood there. And it was like, I remember like it was yesterday, this person, I mean, you could see his face, so he wasn't that far away. Just pointing this gun, and we all knew that the next shot is not going to be a warning shot. There's just no regard. You know, they're gonna shoot. I mean, I don't know whether he would or not. It's hard to say, but the fact that he was he just did it so easily. I mean, can you imagine that happening here right now? Like, you can't. It's not going to happen. So, so we moved on, and within minutes there was police and soldiers on the beach. It was a pretty overcast sort of day, so there was not many people on.
Yeah.
And my parents got questioned, and nothing came out of it. But that memory is so vivid in my mind, and I think about it now in the context of having kids as well.
Well, no wonder you struggled with anxiety. Like, it's all of these high pressure situations that you've been thrown in. You know, like whether it's trying to escape the country first of all, that situation, right? Like these sorts of things. As a kid, I don't think you fully process exactly how serious it could be, but they do have an impact in terms of how you view the world.
I think subconsciously it sort of weighs a lot, especially on a mind that's not yet fully developed and doesn't understand what's going on. Look, I don't know why. We'll get to the anxiety in a second, but I don't know what triggered it. There could be a collective of a lot of things. Now, like I said, my school days weren't memorable. Like I've always sort of been a little bit jealous of my kids. I mean, they don't love school, but they, the school these days, it's fantastic. You know yourself with your kids, but it's nothing like what I had. So I had a bit of a challenging upbringing here because obviously I didn't speak any English. I was the minority in terms of my ethnic background. There's not too many Polish people where I grew up.
Yeah.
My name was unpronounceable, and I actually changed the spelling of my first name so it can be pronounced, but it had a traditional way of spelling it. So no one could pronounce it. My mum insisted that I should keep it because it was we shouldn't forget our sort of heritage, and I get that. But look, I don't think that was probably the right thing to do. My middle name's Richard. Right? It could have solved a lot of problems.
Calling you Richard.
But my dad's name's Richard, so it's named after him. But so I never changed my name. It was at that point where it could have happened, but my identity is tied to my name so much that throughout a lot of my adult life, I avoided doing a lot of things because of my name. Really? Yeah. So, I mean, like even a trivial thing like going to get my license renewed. Yeah. Would give me anxiety because you take a picture back then and you have to sit down until the picture's done, and then I call you out. Yeah. And so you're in a room of people, and the person that's going to be calling out name has no idea how to say it. Yeah. And you're sitting there and you go, and I know that no one cares in that room. It's like competing. When you compete, you're the one that's stressed out for no reason. No one cares whether you lose or not care. It's probably not the right word, but no one's going to laugh at you or pick on you because
you put yourself out there.
That's correct. Right. Yeah. But for me, it was such a big deal. I mean, school as well, like substitute teachers reading roll call and all that sort of stuff. That was a nightmare as well.
Out of curiosity, how would they pronounce your name? What did you get?
So in Polish, there's a formal name. Your first name's got a formal way of saying it, and then there's a informal, right? So a formal, my first name as a friend, you could just call me Voytek, right? But the full name is Voytek. Right, which is just a little bit longer, and Poles like to put as many consonants as possible into everything, right? Yep. I've got 2 Z's in my surname. And it's never used unless it's in a formal context. So like if you're referring to someone that you don't know, or birth certificates, right? And so all my legal papers had the formal name, which is spelt with a W, so Wojciech. Everyone knew me as Voytek, and those two didn't match. I just couldn't be bothered explaining what I just did to every single person that I met, right?
Yeah.
So they just used to say, this is how you pronounce it. But with my surname as well, which is difficult, as you know, the two put together, it's almost like you can't, to an Anglo-Saxon, or anyone that doesn't understand the Polish language, right? It's very difficult to pronounce. So anyway, that's sort of, it's always been a struggle. Even, like, I'm okay about it now, but I haven't really sort of overcome that stress associated. It's strange. It's just so part of me that if I changed my name, I think I'd become a different person.
Yeah. I think there's that self-conscious element, right?
Yeah.
You're very self-conscious that, hey, first of all, you're a different kid in a new country, and then, you're getting bullied for different things or whatever, whether it's the name. Were there other things that they used to bully you about?
Not really. I mean, you pick the name, right? you pick the sort of, the bullies pick the weakest sort of, you're there on your own. I mean, I don't want to make this a depressing sort of listen, but the first 2-3 years of my high school, lunch and recess was me, myself, and I. It's looking back now, I mean, it's horrible. Back then, that was normal for me, right? And it explains a lot when I look back. Academically, I was very, I was excelling until I got to year 11 and 12, and this is sort of coincided with sort of, building some friendships and getting some peer recognition, and obviously that took precedent over my studies. So there's like retrospectively, I do that a lot because it sort of explains a lot where I've been and where I'm going. Yeah. So, so that was it was a bit of a difficult time for me as a kid here. That's why I took up like martial arts as my dad put me into judo early on. So I think I was about 9 when I started doing judo, and I did that for a very long time until my late teens. But it changed my life as well. It gave me a little bit of self-confidence. Obviously, you become a little bit more aware of your own body and what you can do, and never really used it in any conflict. But judo's probably, I mean, it's useful, but there's probably other ways to get out of a sticky situation. You don't want conflict at the end of the day. But it just gave me a little bit of more confidence that if push came to shove, I could sort of look after myself. So that was really, So that was my journey from Poland to Australia, and it's I've retraced that journey in my late 20s. I went back to all the places that my parents went through. Unfortunately, the house that we stayed in was already demolished. But I went to the church that I got my first communion. So that was, I think I was about 28 or 29 when I went back.
Did that bring back a flood of memories for you?
It was insane.
Yeah,
it was surreal. Like, it was like time hasn't passed because it's your association with that moment is so strong that you can't help to feel reconnected.
I find that interesting because for you, like those memories are very vivid, and like as an example, so Sam Gabrielian, who shared his story about his parents leaving Lebanon, Beirut, when the war was happening, and he was like, when we were trying to talk about early life, he was like, Johnny, I don't remember anything like pretty much before the age of 10, and I'm like, okay, so like, what can you remember? And like his only memory was like when the bomb sirens would sound, and his parents would take him and they'd go into like the car park in the basement to wait out these bombs. And like, so his only memory is like hearing the whistling of the bombs as they went overhead, and you could sort of tell whether they were going to land close or far. And aside from that, though, he was like, he doesn't remember much. Like, he could only really we only really sort of picked up from when he was about 10 and come to Australia and what life was like from that perspective. Like, I find that really interesting that, you guys can come from. Obviously, the circumstances are different, but like just the way that mentally you guys process it, like you have quite vivid recollections, whereas for Sam it was like, he couldn't remember really any of it.
Yeah.
Right. And so that I find that to be, pretty interesting, like that sort of spectrum of how people process these sorts of things.
And a lot of people don't actually process it at all. It's suppressed and it comes out in
Other ways.
Yeah. I mean, his journey is obviously like I can't imagine being put in that situation. At the end of the day, it's all relative. I don't understand his experience, and obviously he doesn't understand mine or can't. But obviously it's impacted it
very differently.
So that's how I sort of ended up here, and funny enough, I think about this more often these days. It's just these little turns that you take in life just can take you, whether they're sort of conscious, subconscious, it's a mistake or not a mistake, whatever. Your life just changes in the blink. One decision or one indecision or one could really just impact your life in a profound way. So,
do you think? And I guess I always like touching on faith because I feel like that's always a very interesting topic to see how different people sort of process the idea that whether there's a God or a creator or the universe, whatever you want to call it, that sort of shapes or guides you from that perspective, the direction that you go. And the reason why I like talking about it is because I one of the sort of consistent themes that I always find is when people go through difficult times, often one of the sort of guiding lights or helpful things when people go through difficult times is the idea that there is hope, right? And that's one of the things that religion or faith offers, is that no matter how bad life is or how bad the suffering is or the pain or the hurt, is that there is an opportunity for there to be hope. And, it's a very individual thing, I was doing a podcast with a gentleman, Michael Lyons, just, a few days ago, and he was sharing a story about his son passing away at the age of 29. And as a dad, he was like, there's no way of filling that hole that is left when you lose a child, right? And he's, as a parent, I think anyone who's got children could understand that. Obviously not to the same level that he understands it, but we can empathize a little bit to, even if it's only 1% to sort of understand that sort of feeling. And, from that perspective, there'd be so many people when something like that happens in their life, there'd be no other emotion other than anger. That goes with the grief, right?
Why me?
Why me?
Yeah.
Why is God doing this to me, or why is the world doing this to me? But he was on the flip side where his faith helps him through those difficult moments. So it's like almost like these. I wouldn't say it's like a test, but it's like a checkpoint where it's like you can go either way with this in terms of how you approach it. So I'm a little bit curious, with some of these experiences, and we'll continue on the journey after. But I just want to understand, I guess, from your perspective, like how do you view that? Like, I guess from a faith or any sort of religious aspect. Like you mentioned that you did your first communion in Poland. Are you still religious now? Or?
No. Yeah. So I was brought up as a Catholic.
Yep.
But never really sort of embrace the faith. My parents took me to church until I was in my late teens. So, but I've never really sort of drawn on that to help me, as you've described. So it's actually an interesting point because I've never had a point of reference like that. For me, it's more about I'm in this situation, whether that's a bad situation or an injury, or there's all various setbacks that you can draw. Some of them are relatively minor, but nevertheless, it's you can't do what you want to do because of whatever reason, or something happens in your life. Obviously there are stages of grief and how you feel about that situation. But the way I sort of have overcome that is I always look forward to, okay, well, I'm in this situation right now, by choice or no choice. How do I take advantage of this? And coming back to your example, well, that's probably not applicable if your family member passes away. It's a pretty horrible place to be. Yeah. But who else is around? Like I've got a wife. Are there any other kids? I need to be there for them. I can't let myself fall apart. Now, I'm not saying that that works for everyone, but for me, putting aside a situation like you've just described, I just try to take advantage of the bad, learn from it, and try to look to the future and see how can I now get myself out of this, or how can I improve the situation and what steps do I need to play. So it's more of again, comes back to this sort of logical engineering sort of approach where it's methodical and very sober. I've never leaned on the spiritual thing, that to say, look, I'm going to look up or pray or and something will guide me. I've never been drawn to that, and nothing wrong with that. People draw inspiration from anywhere, and whatever works. For me, I've always wanted to have something planned out and be as much in control of the situation as possible. I don't know how I would react. Obviously, if something tragic happened to me, like you've just described, most of what I've said goes out the window, really.
The reason why I like talking about this is because I feel like it's one of, like, people obviously shy away from talking about politics and they shy away from talking about religion. It's like the number one way is to sort of lose friends. It's or play a heated game, a very competitive game, Monopoly. That's another way to lose friends.
It's a tribal thing, you want one side, or you're my enemy. It's either you're with me or against me, something like that.
Yeah, but I think there's nuance in every in every facet of that discussion. When it comes to, I guess, anxiety, and we're going to get to that shortly, I guess. But I use this sort of analogy, right? That it's very easy to focus on us and ourselves as being the center of the universe, right? That, here I am, I have consciousness, and, I see this world around me and I can influence this world around me. Well, technically I'm like a god. I can give life to people if I find the right partner.
Yeah.
I can create things with my hands. I can build things. I can, do complex calculations. I can apply reason and logic and all of these sorts of things. Well, we're all very much like a god, right? And that doesn't really counter any sort of religious ideology, because I think, there's that very statement that, we're built in the image of God.
That's right.
Right, in the Bible or whatever. So from that perspective, it's like the next sort of logical or reasonable thing that I sort of go through is like, it's like when we used to think that the earth was the center of the universe, right? And people used to get killed for saying that they
burnt
at the stake for believing that the earth wasn't at the center of the universe. And I feel like that's sort of like a little microcosm for how we as individuals view the world, right? We view ourselves as the center of the universe, but yet every single day, we move a little bit around this big star that sits in the middle of our solar system, and we rotate around the sun. Now, whether we appreciate it or not, we rotate around the sun, and we probably take it for granted most days. Just like probably most days in our life, we would never even question the idea that, whether there's a God or a universe or whatever the case may be. But that doesn't take away from the fact that every day we're still revolving around the sun.
That's true.
So I like that analogy, because I guess that sort of influences my perspective on whether a God exists or not. You know, I feel like it's a very human thing to think that we are at the center of the universe. And I feel like with that though, and this sort of ties in a little bit with parenting. My third child, Eden, she's a little bit difficult. And when I say she's difficult is she has a very strong sense of self. So she's going through this phase, and for I guess any struggling parents out there,
how old is she?
She turns 3 at the end of the year. So any sort of parent that's struggling with a child with behavioural difficulties, there's a great book that I bought the audio book and I really liked it. And it was Raising Lions by Joe Newman, and talks about like a lot of like behavioural issues, like whether it's ADD or autism and some of the other factors that might be influencing this. But essentially, you know, I was saying this to my wife because Eden, she can have a tantrum for like an hour, right? And my wife was like, "Oh, I'm worried that it's going to cause her like some kind of long-term harm," right? And I was explaining to her, like, because she listened to the audiobook as well, but basically the stage that Eden is at is that she's in this phase of omnipotence where she sort of understands that she's a conscious being, but she still doesn't recognize that other people or other children are the same as her. So she doesn't share well. Sometimes she doesn't like to play with others because she feels that, like, you know, she doesn't like to, if she wants to cuddle, she wants to cuddle. She doesn't want to let the other kids come and cuddle me at the same time. So she hasn't moved from this stage of being omnipotent into this phase of being interdependent and realizing that, hey, because she's conscious and she understands that she can request things and do these sorts of things, that other people might have requests and the same sorts of feelings as well. And that very much, I feel like, emulates our most people's relationship with God or universe or whatever the case may be, is that we're in this phase of omnipotence, that we are in control of everything and we have to be in control of everything. The problem with that is that actually leads to a lot of anxiety, right? In children, for when they go through this phase, because they're feeling like, oh, I have to control this situation. So if my daddy or my mummy doesn't get me the things that I want, it's a meltdown.
Yeah.
Right? The world isn't operating according to how I saw the world needed to be controlled. And so part of her development is, you know, as parents, we need to try and help her to get through this phase of omnipotence, to understand that we actually have to move to interdependence, where she doesn't have to feel like she's in control the whole time. She can rely on mummy and daddy to do these other things, or her sisters or brothers and siblings to do these other things. And, you know, that again, to me, sort of emulates this sort of relationship that most people have with a God or a creator, where it's like, okay, you know, whether he exists or he doesn't exist, you know, doesn't really influence me because I'm in control of my life. I make my decisions. I choose what I want to do, and I have all of these options, and these are the things that I want to do. But with having that control creates anxiety.
And yeah, that's a very interesting way of looking at this. I like that, actually.
Yeah.
It sort of allows you to let go a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's the right way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
You know, the question of God, religion. I think for me as well, I think that the separation of a God and religion has to happen for me in my mind. Religion for me serves different purpose than being spiritual.
Yep.
And so, you know, the question of believing in God, I don't really question that because I don't know the answer, and that doesn't really matter. So I'm comfortable with just accepting whatever, and if there is, there isn't, that's okay. But yeah, look, I've never really thought about it like you've described. It's always been tied to a religious context, that you have to follow certain rules and stuff like that. But I think what you're talking about is bigger than that, and it's not tied down to any set of rules. I don't know, I might be putting words in your mouth, but that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, so I guess there's two parts to it, right? So the first part is that, okay, if there is this, you accept that there could potentially be this God, right? The next part of it then is, well, what does that mean for you, right? And so I guess where I'm at with it, and by all means, I don't have all the answers, right? This is just where I'm at in terms of my understanding and sort of where I sort of see how things work, is that, okay, if I was to, if I believe that a God or a creator exists, right? And this God or creator is, it's like the sun, right? So as in the physical sun, the star,
Yep.
not your son as in your son, child. That we revolve around the sun every day, and we can take it for granted, when the reality is the sun gives us majority of our life. Without the sun, the plants don't grow. The animals can't eat the vegetation. We can't eat the animals that eat the vegetation, or eat the things that don't grow as a result of it. So from that perspective, why do a lot of, I guess, ancient sort of peoples, revere the sun, is in that sense, because obviously it gives life. Now, if I believe that a God or a creator exists, well, whether I now have a choice in terms of what do I want that relationship to look like. Now, I liken this to like your father, right? And so for me, I had a very fractured relationship with my father for many, many years, partly because of what happened with my mum, and I blamed him for a lot of things that, he was doing his best to try and live his life. And yeah, he made some wrong decisions, and he can probably admit that now. But the only person that was hurting was me, because I held on to all this resentment and hatred towards him. And, so I looked at it from that perspective, and I go, okay, let's say God exists. What kind of relationship do I want to have with God then? Do I want this relationship where I don't talk to him, much like, for all those years I didn't talk to my own dad? Or do I want a relationship with him where, okay, yeah, maybe some things have happened in my life, just like, my dad had made some mistakes that I couldn't understand, or that, taught me some lessons in terms of how not to be. But do I need to hold on to that hatred forever? There's a saying, hatred is like, drinking the poison and expecting the other person to die, right? So every day I'm drinking this poison thinking that, oh yeah, it's going to get at my dad, when the only person that was hurting it was me. And like, so I went through a whole process of like, just eventually one day waking up and realizing that I don't want it to hurt me anymore. So I let go of it.
Yeah.
So when it comes to that relationship with God, what do I want that to look like? Do I want it to look like, okay, I'm now in a time of need, I'm down on my luck, whatever's happened in my life, and I'm praying to God, please help me because I don't have anything else in my life? Or do I want that relationship to sort of look like, I can express my gratitude to all the things, the positive things that I've been given in life. I can have somebody to talk to, even if I may not hear the voice directly talking back to me, but at least I can vent some of those things and my frustrations and all those sorts of things.
A sounding board, yeah.
A sounding board,
yeah.
Right? So from that perspective, I was like, okay, yeah, like what kind of relationship do I want with God? I think I want that latter kind of relationship where I can sort of express those sorts of emotions and feelings. And, if I don't agree with something, okay, I can say, okay, well, why are you taking me this direction when I thought I was going that? And at the same time, I feel like, so I think gratitude is a big piece of that, because I feel like too many times it's just like, it's like if you call your friend and say, hey, can you spot me $1,000? Yeah. It's like, oh, what, do I not get a hello?
Yeah.
Right?
It's only, you only call when you need
something.
That's right.
So I had to change that in my own mind to go and say, okay.
That's very interesting.
No, I want to be able to just, express my gratitude on some days. Some days I don't even ask for anything. Some days it's just like, hey, thank you for giving me another opportunity to do a podcast today. Right? And then, look, I don't know what we're going to talk about today, but, hopefully you can give me some inspiration or some words to share that might resonate with some people. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. As long as I can have a positive conversation with somebody and really empathize and share and, I guess, express humanity, right? Like these are the sorts of things that I'm very grateful for. There's not a lot of people that are as blessed as me to be able to sit down with somebody for a couple of hours. And like, if you think about it, collectively, how many minutes of conversation have we had prior to this? It'd probably be less than 10 minutes.
I think so.
Yeah.
Not more than 10.
Not more than 10.
No.
Right? But then for us, we're already, almost an hour and 10 in, and we've gotten into some pretty deep topics, and we've gotten to talk about some pretty, I wouldn't say controversial, but things that, would make people really question things. And not for any other reason than out of personal interest.
Yeah.
Right?
Two things. Number one, I find what you've described as very, very interesting and very unique. And I think you've tapped into something that people may be doing, but they don't actually tie that into this God space. So people have thoughts, people meditate, people talk in their mind, right? But you've redirected that to someone, and I think doing that creates a relationship that you can have and you can lean on, even though you might not get anything physically, verbally back. Even just hearing yourself think or speak is enough sometimes to make you feel comfortable. So I think what you're doing is fantastic. I don't have that. I don't know whether I would consider that, but it's definitely something that I can see working for me as well. Whether I would define that as God or not, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But the second thing I'm curious to know is so that this relationship that you've got is a relationship that helps you on a daily basis, right? And helps you in the time that you're here. Do you also look into a post-life relationship with a God? Do you believe that having this relationship now will eventually take you somewhere after you move on?
Yeah, so this is where I would delineate from, I guess, religions from that perspective, right? So the right answer is that I don't have a formal answer for this.
Okay.
Right? I have my inference,
Yep.
and my inference is that reality is that when we die, we all rejoin God in some form of a way. And there's a couple of things that influence this, but yeah, part of it was a psychedelic experience, right? And I think I've shared that on a few episodes, so I won't go into all that again. But essentially, there was a few things post the psychedelic experience. So this is like talking the next day, where I still felt like I was in two different worlds.
Wow.
And I could see things both in the physical sense of me doing things, and then also have like a secondary understanding from a third party perspective. So one of those things was like, like when we die, right? Basically, there's like this massive tapestry of all the lives that have lived, or ever will live, and this thing is infinite, right? And in this tapestry, essentially, it was almost like you think like the David Jones style pattern, you know, that sort of herringbone, or like basically, you know, if it's silver and black, it doesn't really matter. Like the colors didn't really matter. But the point is that if you didn't have a differentiation in color between silver and black, how would you know this thing ever existed? If the tapestry was just all black or all silver, you wouldn't be actually able to differentiate that this tapestry ever existed. So this is something that it's probably more come to me more recently. But, you know, most people, when you think of something that's silver and black or white and black, you go, oh, well, the white one's positive, the black one's negative. But, you know, I sort of took away from that it's not really to say that the black life was somebody that lived a bad life. No, it was just they lived a life. But the only way you can delineate between...
By contrast.
is by contrast.
Yeah.
Right? So from that perspective, like I used to have this really negative connotation to the word sin, right? I always felt it was very judgmental.
Yeah.
Right? And so, you know, Christians love the idea of saying, you know, we're all sinners.
Yep.
Right? And I'd feel like, oh, why is this person judging me?
Yeah.
But if you actually think about what they're saying we are all sinners. That includes themselves. They're not saying they're better than you. They're just saying that something that is actually true in the sense that everybody sins, whether it's sin in thought or sin in actual practice. Now, this experience also helped me to sort of get around that sort of negative connotation I had with the word sin, because at the end of the day, the sort of reasoning I sort of came out with was that just like when you eat, you know, you're gonna poo, or you're gonna wee, you're gonna urinate. You know, you're gonna pass the food through your system and out the other side, right? And so when you consume life, when you eat life, you consume life. The natural byproduct is sin. Now, there's different variations in terms of the level of sin. You know, just like, you know, if you eat bad food and you get food poisoning, well, that's a lot messier than if you have a good, clean diet and the stools are nice and, you know, in an easy shape to sort of keep clean. But when that epiphany came to me was I was actually, one of my kids had pooed and I had them in the bathtub. I was washing them down. It was the messiest poo, right? And it was like, you could look at this and go, oh, this is absolutely disgusting. But it was like, okay, no, like in the same sense that before I cuddle my daughter again, I need to wash her down and get her clean, and so she can rejoin me and we can cuddle. in the same sense, you know, for us to rejoin God, you know, all of our sin from the world of consuming life will need to be resolved as well, and it will need to be cleaned. Now, people might take that away and go, okay, well, that's why, you know, the Catholics will then, you know, repent and do all that sort of stuff. I think that's where I guess some of the Catholic sort of reasoning in terms of purgatory and those sorts of things makes more sense. That, you know, it's not just about believing or the work. Like there's an element of the work that you do, and then there's an element of people having an opportunity still to rejoin God, right? So that's sort of how I view it. You know, do I believe in a heaven and a hell? Probably not in the same sense that organized religion would believe in a heaven or hell. I sort of think that, you know, when we die, there's a few factors that go into it. But one factor is like, you know, before we were born, we were dead, right? And so essentially there was nothingness. We were at peace. And I often, this is one of my more later sort of thoughts, is that, isn't it funny how when somebody dies, the thing we always wish them is to rest in peace.
Yeah.
Right? But we never would say that to somebody that's living. Yeah. You know, we always say, I wish you luck.
Yeah.
Or, you know, I wish you fortune, or all these sorts of things.
Yeah.
All the best. All these material things we wish somebody. But when somebody dies, irrespective of whether they're a good person or a bad person or whatever kind of person in the world, we always say rest in peace. I feel like that is actually a great guideline in terms of how we should be living life. Because if the end destination is to be in peace, why can't we go through life and chase peace? Peace from our anxiety, peace from our worries, peace from our emotions, our hatreds, our negative emotions, right? Even in our happiest times, we know that the happiness doesn't last forever, you know? So what I think, you know, part of the goal, well, I guess my personal perspective is part of the goal is that where there are always going to be peaks and troughs, but we need to be at peace with these things. And I guess that's one thing that my sort of view or perspective on God and having a relationship with God helps with, is because when I sort of then view things, I don't need to be in control. I can just surrender to whatever's going to happen. And it's allowed me to then, rather than be so focused on the goal, be more focused on, okay, well, whatever happens, happens. Let's actually just enjoy this. You know, let's enjoy the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. You know, really sit with those emotions, both positive and negative.
It's very interesting because the way you resolve that in your own mind and explain it to, I guess, to ease your tension and anxiety and day-to-day stuff. I've taken something on board a while ago that sort of resembles that in a way, and it's a saying that the only reason you want to win a game is so you can be free from it, right? And the word game can be replaced for anything, a problem, right? So if you, when you think about that, is I often come to that saying when I'm struggling with something, and it reminds me of that saying, to say the only reason why I want to resolve that issue is so I can be free with it, so I can be at peace with it, right?
Yep.
And it sort of helped me through a lot of problems, and whether that be conflict resolution, whether you walk away from a job. As an example, you might walk away from a job because it's stressful. Now, the application of that saying is, well, you won that game by making that decision, right? So you're not no longer trapped in that cycle, therefore you become free of it, right? So when I was listening to you talk about that saying was resonating in me. I know it's very simplified, hasn't got that sort of spiritual connotation with God, but I feel like it seems to me what you're saying is that your relationship allows you to have these conflict resolutions or problem-solving resolutions by dialogue, and it makes you at peace. So you're not constantly trying to solve and struggle with everyday lives. You let that go. I mean, that's what I'm hearing. I might be interpreting it
absolutely
incorrectly, but it's a fantastic way of looking at this. And when did you come to that?
So
is it post this experience that you talked to?
So look, so I think I had this experience in 2021, right? And my wife is a devout Catholic. So it was funny when I told her that, you know, I'm going to take this thing, I'm going to go lie in the study and blah, blah, blah. She was like, when you meet God, tell him I said hi, right? And, you know, when I did it, I had a whole list of questions, and like, you know, I didn't just go and just take a drug and then just go, let's see where this goes. It was like, okay, these are the things that I'm curious to find out. And these are the things that I want to sort of understand.
This was a well-organized planned trip.
A planned trip, a planned trip, right? And so then, you know, I got some of the answers. I didn't get all the answers, right? And so, like, when it comes to the more organized aspects of religion, you know, I feel like I will ask, you know, God, you know, if he wants me to recognize that he has a name, you know, if his name is Jesus or Allah or these sorts of things, I need to, like, you know, if it's important to him, to share that with me, because, you know, there are ramifications to that, right? If I was to believe that God is Jesus or God is Allah, like, at the end of the day, to me, I sort of think that all religion still realistically probably stems from the same place. It's just a matter of perspective, because, you know, we're trying to understand something that is so immense, that is infinitely large. Like, you know, it's pretty hard to comprehend, you know. And I think people that try and say that they have all the answers can often, you know, be misguided in terms of how they approach it. They have an interpretation, just like I have an interpretation. Like, I'm not saying this to go and say, you know, everybody should think the way that I think. I'm saying I like sharing it because I think it's actually an important question in terms of how you live life, right?
It's amazing because, like I said, I've never looked at it like that, but it does resonate with me, and I've got my own little sort of hacks that are similar to yours, but not necessarily the same. And at the end of the day, you're correct. You wanna be at peace right now, right? And so whatever helps you get there is, you know, you should use that. And I think this is the great thing about this type of, you know, what we're doing now, is that you're sharing it, and hopefully someone will listen to that, and the penny will drop for them.
Well,
hopefully, you know, because that's the whole idea.
Learning
from each other.
So like, even if you take that example, and I guess we can sort of talk a bit about anxiety, and also I'm curious about your journey in terms of like moving into civil engineering and things like that, right? But if you think about what is the general cause of a lot of anxiety, it's control. Right?
That's true.
It's feeling like you need to control these things, right? Whereas I've taken a bit of a alternate pathway now, where it's, rather than me seeking to control things, I seek to surrender. You know, I'm surrendering. I'm saying, hey, you know, whatever may be, you know, I'm going to continue doing the things that I love, and whatever is meant to be the pathway that I'm supposed to come out with, then so be it. And I'll give you a real world example of this, right? So when I left the automotive industry, you know, my goal was probably still to go back, because I think from a money perspective, that was the right thing to do for my family. And it was very weird because, you know, here I was, someone that had 17 years experience in the automotive industry, started as an apprentice mechanic. Like, I ticked so many of the boxes. I got a law degree, I got an engineering science degree. I've worked at, you know, Toyota Motor Corporation, so, you know, at the head office of one of the largest automotive manufacturers in the world. You know, I've represented great brands like BMW and Mercedes-Benz, and ran, you know, decent-sized dealerships, proved, you know, through results that I could turn these businesses around and generate, you know, good amounts of revenue and income. And I struggled to actually get another job, right? And, you know, it was like...
Overqualified?
I wouldn't say overqualified. It was just one of those things where it's like, I can't give you the exact reasons why I might have been overlooked or not even considered, you know. And I'll share a more recent one where, you know, I'd already closed the chapter in my life and said, no, I'm done with the automotive industry. Let's just see whatever comes next, right? Because to me, it was like, this was like God saying to me, hey, I'm closing this door for you. And I guess to give you a bit of context in the lead up to that. So when I was at BMW, I used to drive home down the M5, and I'd be saying a prayer of gratitude, just saying, you know, God, hey, thanks for another great day. You know, we made lots of money. We did X, Y, and Z, and got happy staff and happy people. And I'm driving this cocked up, you know, M3 or whatever car that I'm driving at that particular time. But, you know, if there is something more that you want me to do in life, I hope you can guide me. Because, you know, like, don't get me wrong, I'm so grateful for the life that you give me, but is this all there is to life? And for whatever reason, I eventually I got made redundant, COVID stuff. And anyway, long story short, got made redundant. And, was thinking, okay, after all the craziness of COVID, I should be able to sort out another job. Like I wasn't really too concerned. And, I was like, I'll try and apply for different things, and even like trying to leverage networks, right? Having relationships with people that I'd worked with previously who'd be like, yeah, no worries, you should be a shoo-in.
Yeah.
And it would never go past a certain point. And I was like, oh, this is very interesting. And now I could take this away and get very frustrated and upset about it and go, what the fuck is wrong? Right? Like, is there something wrong with me? What have I done that's sort of, created this sort of problem? Or I could look at it from the perspective of, hey, you know what? God, I'm going to test you, right? I'm going to keep applying for these jobs, and I'm going to see, is it really that you don't want me to work in the automotive industry, or is it that there's something wrong with me? Like it's actually my fault. And it was like opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. It just wouldn't come to fruition. And so, I still experienced the range of emotions. Like, shit, how am I going to like fend for my family? How am I going to do all this? Right. But I was also a bit torn. I was always torn because it's like, okay, if I go back to work in auto, there's a lot of things that I'm going to have to give up. Whether it's training time, whether it's all of this sort of stuff. And at the end of the day, I'm living like the best life that I could possibly live at the present moment. Why wouldn't I want to continue living this life? Well, okay, why wouldn't I? Because the money, right? And so it was like, okay, all these doors that I thought, should have just been a no-brainer for me to walk through and get a job. The last one, as I said, was I'd closed the door on the automotive chapter. I had a friend actually then say, hey, there's this opportunity. I think it'd be really great for you. And it was like, are you interested? I said, look, I'll have a chat. And then the chat never happened. Right. And like, there's an email that was basically sent that was like, oh yeah, this person who's like the head of XYZ will give you a call, never called. And so it was like, a referral that was supposed to get me in the door, so to speak. And it never happened. And I was like, you can take that one of whatever way you want. But I'd already taken it in my mind that, that chapter of my life is closed. It's not meant to be.
Yeah.
Right. So I can keep trying and pushing as hard as I like. But all I'm doing is I'm hurting myself because I'm creating all this unnecessary anxiety and worry and almost like shame that, here I was with this great career and it's no longer there. And why am I chasing those sorts of things? Am I chasing it for the right reasons? Really, what was I chasing it for? Money? For the title? For the ego? Right? So I was like, okay, let's close that chapter of my life. And, other opportunities opened up as a result of all these other things that I do. I'm pretty much, on board to work with a company called Alta. So they used to run the Whip to Warrior program. I'm off to New Zealand, to go and help them with a rollout of their new platform and do a whole bunch of different things. And it actually ties in even better than anything that I could have ever done in the automotive industry, because now it sort of ties in with the podcast. It ties in with the martial arts stuff, the analysis and all of these other bits and pieces, and also leverages the skills that I generated in the automotive industry. So I was like, there was always this pathway that I was going to eventually get to. It was just a matter of time.
Yeah, it's fantastic to hear a story like that, because at the end of the day, and you'll get there pretty soon, you'll have to advise your kids on what to do in life.
Yeah.
When they're in year 12 and they're trying to choose subjects. And one of the most difficult questions or things to do is to give them the best advice that you can without actually telling them what to do. And it seems to me that what you've just described, you had all these roadblocks despite all your experience and knowledge in the industry, but there's something, and we call that something for now, was sort of closing the doors or guiding you in a different way, and you were persisting for the right reasons. When I was listening to you, I was just thinking, well, I'm a father. I've got responsibility. Of course, I've got to put my best foot forward to make a living. This is all I know what to do, and for me to provide for my family, I need to get this job and this type of work. And I feel that's what you were doing. You were trying to chase that. You mentioned other things like ego and all that. I don't believe that. I think you were genuinely trying to do the best for your family.
Yeah.
And going in an industry where you know yourself that you can perform and make a good living is a natural thing to do. It's very difficult just to go, look, I'm just going to train at lunchtime and have a chat with someone, and all of a sudden all the bills get paid.
Yeah.
I mean, it just, if it was as simple as that, more people doing it. It's very difficult, but I'm very, very intrigued that how you sort of you persisted, and yet you couldn't get what you probably deserve to get is a job within your industry, and then you somehow, somehow, I mean, I'm sure there was more to that, but you ended up where you are right now. It's fascinating. You hear a lot of examples like that, stories like that, and when you retrospectively think back, it all sort of makes sense. But when you're sort of going through that process, I think it's difficult to sort of explain it in your mind, and the anxiety of I have to do something. There's bills to pay.
Yeah,
doesn't help. And so then coming back to your relationship with a God, I can see how that sort of all makes sense now, because in your mind, you persisted and were shown a different path somehow. It's fantastic. Like, it's a beautiful story, man.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the benefits of having a belief like that, because what it allows you to do is to really be in the moment. And there's actually a Bible saying for that, which is, I've come so that you can live life to the full. Now, what does life to the full mean? That doesn't mean that everything's going to be great, right? I can tell you all the hard times that I've had over the last couple of years making nothing, right? Having no income and just watching your savings just go out the window.
Yeah.
And that sort of mindset in terms of, what do you do with your expenses? What do you do when it comes to, you can't even buy your kids something,
And how much stress is that on your shoulders? Like, personally, for me, that's a massive weight.
Yeah, look.
It's before you answer that question, I guess, you want the best for your kids, really.
Yeah.
Like, when if shit hits the fan, I can get by. I don't need all this. But for some reason, there's a great amount of guilt for taking away things from your kids. Right?
Well, you don't feel like a man.
No, that's right. That's right.
You don't feel like a provider.
That's correct.
Right.
So the purpose, and I think this comes back. I don't know who said this, or maybe it could have been. I can't remember who said it, but every man has to have a purpose. They've got to earn money, right? It might be a little bit of an old way of thinking about it, but and have a respect is also important. I think self-esteem and all that comes with it. It's all associated with your identity of being able to provide.
Yeah.
And I don't mean any disrespect, obviously, to women that especially single mums. I know, they have to step up and do that. So I'm not exclusively saying men, but in traditionally there's that. There's this need to go out there and do the best for your family, I think.
Yeah.
And for credit to you, I mean, I'd love to hear a bit more about it, but how did you actually sort of overcome that anxiety of just being that in limbo, so to speak? You don't have a job, and you're saying your savings are, you're looking at your bank account, and there's nothing on the horizon. Well, how do you deal with that?
I think for me, without my wife, it would be very difficult. She's been so supportive, and I think for her, she probably has seen like this sort of development in terms of my own personality and my beliefs that obviously touch her in some way, that she continues to be supportive, so I enough credit can't be given to her, because I feel like, if it was any other partner that they'd be on my back.
Yeah.
Go get a job, go do anything, go work at the supermarket, go back to working on cars, do something.
Yeah.
Right. But she's just like, she can sort of, I think she sort of understood that, perhaps there's something else that I'm meant to be doing.
Yeah.
Right. And so to keep forging ahead and, I sort of considered all the different, pathways as how do I increase the monetization of certain things, or how do I focus on different bits and pieces to sort of make the living that I want to be living in, it's been good because, you know, I've done a lot of combat sports commentary, and, you know, I drive a small income from that. And then it was like, okay, how else do I supplement this income? You know, like so the reality was that, okay, what do we need to survive? And I looked at it from this perspective of, okay, if I'm going to engineer the life that I want to live, let's reverse engineer this process. Let's start with, okay, what do I want life to look like? Well, I want to have time for kids. Okay, what does that look like? How much time do I need to have at home? And so then originally my plans were, okay, I'm going to just focus on doing combat sports commentary or ring announcing on a Friday or a Saturday night at an event for some money, and then try and look at other ways to potentially support that. And so one of the pathways that I'd identified was perhaps I go and be a real estate auctioneer and use the skills that I've got, you know, with my voice and things like that, to go and do something like that, and maybe do 3 or 4 auctions on a Saturday and call it done for a week.
That's incredible.
Right?
It's come full circle with the talent stack discussion that we had the other day.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So you know, it was quite funny that, like, I had this idea, and then not long after it, then I'm in discussions with Alta to do all this other stuff. And, like, rightfully or wrongfully, you know, I'd already paid for the program to get the real estate certification. So I was like, okay, now I've got to finish this bad boy. It's like, it's frustrating because it takes away your time from other things. But at the same time, it's like, I'd rather just have that in the background and know whether I use it or not, okay, it doesn't really matter. You know, I've got so many qualifications that I don't really use on a day-to-day perspective. But if you approach it in the right manner, like, it's all learning, it's all experience.
Absolutely. It gives you options.
Yeah.
You can choose to go and do an auction on a Saturday. If you
Yeah.
want. It's very interesting. I look, I can sort of resonate a little bit with where you've been and where you're going. I also do have a supportive wife, and when you were talking about your wife telling you, don't worry, don't, you know, go and follow your path, don't, I'm putting words in your mouth, but along that sort of that path, I never ever felt any pressure. It's always been, don't worry, we'll work it out. I mean, it's so comforting to hear that. You know, the stress doesn't go away entirely. No, but at least you know that you've got support, which is counts to so much. It's not funny. So I needed to highlight that because it's very important that family sort of close partner support is incredibly important.
So for you, right, like, you know, when you finished high school, did you have any idea what you wanted to do? And then I guess, how did you then fall into civil engineering?
Yeah. So as I said, high school, probably up to year 11, I was excelling. I was doing very well without too much effort, really. I don't know why. It could have been that I had so much spare time that I just maybe put the effort in without sort of realising it. But it all changed for me year 11 and 12, I think, when I sort of found myself a little bit and started to perhaps just live out my life a little bit of all the years that I've just been sort of in a shell. And obviously that took away time from my studies, and I actually didn't do that well in my HSC, and that was a big wake-up call for me. I really, really felt that I can get the mark I wanted without putting a lot of effort in. Because it was just sort of looking back, and I can do this, right? Rude shock, and it was a bit of an awakening. So I took a long path to get to where I was. I did a diploma in mechanical engineering initially. I have no idea why I did that, to be quite honest. My passion was always in fitness.
Oh wow!
I've always since I started sort of training judo, I've sort of developed a passion. So I wanted to do either something in fitness. Computing was also one of my big passions. I had a computer. I did some programming back then, all that sort of stuff. But why I ended up in engineering, I've got no ideas. Probably because I think the prestige around the word engineering.
Yep.
Maybe that was something that my parents pushed. I don't want to make any accusations right now, but maybe that was the case. So I started off with mechanical, then I went to uni to continue mechanical engineering, and a friend of mine said, I don't like this course, so I'm going to do civil. I know I've got an uncle that does civil, he's doing quite well. So we both decided to change to civil. It was that stupid. There was no thought, no idea, no passion. For somehow I never thought I could go back and do computing or anything in the fitness sort of industry. I just felt that I was committed already. I invested so much time that I just didn't really want to reinvent myself, and it's one of the biggest mistakes of my life. I'm not regretting obviously doing it, because it's given me a good, comfortable life in terms of income, but it's not a passion for me, to be quite honest. It's just a job.
Yeah.
And this is the message that I've really tried to sort of instill with my kids. Don't look at, keep telling them, don't look at picking something that you have to do for the rest of your life. Just look at the 5-10 year horizon. What do you want to do now? I want to go to uni. What do you want to study? Well, I don't know. Well, pick a subject. You're 18, 19.
Yeah.
Even if you get it wrong, so what? Just do something. 5 year horizon, right? Because in time, you'll find your calling, right? And it might take you 5 years, 10 years. But don't lock yourself into a lifetime of work. Because that's crazy. Like, you change as a person. There are examples. Obviously, artists, is a different thing. You're a musician. It's a calling. It's forever. Doctors, other people, they've got a calling. I've never had one. So my brush with civil engineering was purely coincidental. So I finished the uni degree, and then that was early 90s. There was a recession. I couldn't get a job. I could not get a job.
Wow.
I really wanted to do design work. So design, sort of work in a design office, doing structural residential design work. Couldn't get a job, and finally ended up on a construction site where I started sort of working as a site engineer, and then eventually into project management, delivering infrastructure projects. So it's a brief sort of history of my how I landed with a civil engineering sort of career. But again, sort of this anxiety, pressure to fix the mistake of not performing well in my HSC, right? So at the end of the day, I didn't know what I wanted to do. All I wanted to do is get a good enough mark to give me options. That's what I told my girls when they were doing the HSC. Don't focus on the career. Just do the best you can, so then you can have as many options as you can. Right? Yeah. And if you don't want to go to uni, then don't go to uni. I'm not making you go anywhere. Yeah. But don't leave yourself like I did. With nothing. I never wanted to do a trade. I'm pretty hopeless with on the tools. I've got 2 tools. I've got a screwdriver and a hammer. If I can't fix it with that, I've got to call someone. You're done. So there was never a career in trades for me. So it had to be something that I had to use my brain a bit. And look, it's looking back, it's been great. Jobs have been good, stressful. Retrospectively, looking back, it's been good. But if I had my time again, I'd probably do something different. Now, I'm not suggesting that I'll do this forever. I'm sort of in a position where you were a few years ago, when I do want to make a change. It's not easy, as you know, but I'm comfortable with that. I don't need to make it tomorrow. I'm sort of sitting on that thought and trying to sort of pick my time, so to speak. So, so civil engineering has been interesting. It's given me the mind that I have, which is an analytical, logical sort of way of looking at the world. Which I'm very grateful for. It's the way I think. It's the way I make decisions. So no, it hasn't been a waste of time, obviously. I must be doing something right because I've been employed for all this time. So, but yeah, it's something that is not I'm not passionate about.
Mm.
Um,
I call it the golden handcuffs. Right?
yes.
You got all the money.
I wouldn't say I've got all the money,
but it's
I've
like
got,
you're generating a great income for yourself.
Yeah,
So it's hard to take your hands out of the golden handcuffs.
it's very difficult.
It's paying the bills, right?
It's very difficult, and it's human nature. You get you get a rise in your salary, and so you start spending more. You go on holidays, and so it's this is sort of like a spiral to, you're doomed because the more you earn, the more you spend.
Yeah.
Right, and you've got to keep up the whole income to support your lifestyle. It's very hard to break those shackles, but that's okay. Look, it's got me where I'm right now, and we've always invested our money into travels. We've been to a whole heap of places around the world. We've taken the kids.
Yeah,
they've travelled the world like probably.
That's a great thing.
Yeah,
because those experiences they develop a person's wisdom.
that's right.
Because you're seeing different perspectives. You're seeing how other people live.
That's correct. I had this discussion with someone just the other day about knowing another language. This is one of my sort of. I try not to have any regrets, but my kids don't speak any other language other than English because my wife's background's Jordanian, so she speaks a little bit of Arabic and I speak Polish. So we had twins up front. It was hard enough to survive,
let alone trying to
and then try to learn each other's languages at the same time. So I've tried to plead forgiveness for my kids, not knowing to them. I said, look, you can always go and learn the language yourself now. I'm not stopping you.
Are they identical or?
Yeah, they're identical. Yeah. The girls are identical. So they, but knowing another language, you actually learn how to think in that culture.
Absolutely.
It's not just learning to communicate, because now you've got all the tools that you don't really need to. Everyone speaks English.
Yeah.
Most of you don't really need to learn another language, right? But I know that when I'm thinking and talking in my broken Polish, right, that I'm actually now a slightly different person, and my worldview changes a little bit. The way people explain and understand certain situations are explained through the culture of that language, right? And you understand it immediately. So that's where the value is of knowing another language, other than obviously than be able to speak it, right? So yeah, look, that's if that's another lesson. If you can start early, with the kids, it's a fantastic thing to know more than one language.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's Polish is not that useful worldwide, and so but hopefully they'll one day decide to learn something and give them that broader perspective on life.
Yeah. Well, it's about, if you have to have the interest in it, right? Like
you have to.
You have to pursue your interests.
No, you can't just say go and do it because I said so. Obviously, that doesn't work. But I'm just trying to let them know that it's a wonderful skill. Pick a language that you can, like Spanish or something that you can go. Half the world speaks Spanish.
Yeah.
Whatever. It doesn't have to be Polish or Arabic. But that's something that I encourage people to do is try to learn, because you see all these worldly events on the news and you go, why is this happening there? Why? And, just having a little bit of understanding of how people think goes such a long way in resolving conflict.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, so because you left the company that you're at to form your own company when you were going through your civil career.
Yeah.
Now that was obviously a bit of a punt, right? Like it was.
Yeah. Look, it's always been for me a calculator. I'm not a gambler, so I don't just rip the Band-Aid off and just hope for the best. So it was a calculated risk. It was coming. Look, we had the two other partners were friends of mine. One from high school, so I've known him for a long time. So at the end of the day, it was more about work-life balance. I I got sick when I was in my early 40s, just putting too much time into work, and the doctor said to me, "Look, you've got to make some decisions and some changes. Otherwise, you're not going to end up well.
Yep.
You're on a path to destruction, right?" And so that was actually the second time I made something. I've changed my life to better my health. The first one was a little bit earlier, where I met this guy on site. Sidetracking a little bit to your question, but I was living a life. I was in my 20s. It was a very destructive life. So I was working, and I was just basically living to party and just not really paying attention to anything. It was a destructive part of my life. And I think looking back, it's just this sort of letting my anxiety out, letting all the frustration out from my early years here. It's just sort of, I probably needed to do that. Maybe not for that long, but and I remember this day. I was on a construction site. We were digging a hole at Kirribilli, so there was a deep excavation for a block of units, and I was just my second or first day with this company, and I was looking around at this excavation. It was done in sandstone. It was beautiful, and this guy walked up to me and he goes, "What do you think?" I go, "Not bad." He looked at me, "Not bad. Man, it's a work of art. I did this." Right? It was this arrogant guy, dressed nicely, and he was an excavator operator. No disrespect to any excavator operators, but he didn't fit that image that you might have with an excavator operator.
Yeah.
Young, clean shaven. He goes, This is I did this. This is a work of art." He said to me. I go, "No, it's nice. Like, I'm not saying anything. Like, anyway, we struck a friendship, and he was along. He practiced kung fu. He was a teacher at a school at Moorebank, and he got me into that, and that really sort of took me out of the world of just having too much indulgence, and just refocusing back into health and being structured and being discipline. Yeah, that I think that really sort of, looking back, I'm not sure that saved my life, but I think it really, really set me on a path. Shout out to Darren Strati. Unfortunately, he got murdered in Tanzania.
Wow.
Building an orphanage for kids. He got robbed, and
they shot him.
He protected his partner, and they shot him. The sad thing about that story is that he probably would have survived anywhere else. He basically got shot, and blood got into his lungs, and he drowned by the time they could save him. He died at the age of, he was very young, late 30s.
Wow.
I'll never forget him. We were never close friends. We'd sort of colleagues at work.
Yep.
But he had such a massive impact on my life that I'll forever be grateful. And for anyone that's interested, if they want to look up, there's an Australian story, the ABC program, that was done on him actually after his death. So,
wow.
But anyway, that was the first time. The second time was in my 40s when I had this company, and I was just the kids were young, so you eat all the leftovers, you eat poorly, you don't sleep, and it was just starting to catch up with me, and went to the doctor, I can't remember for whatever reason, and they said, "You've got to make some changes here." And that was the slow path to just actually understanding that I can't kill myself for this job. Doesn't matter how much I'm going to earn or what the potential is or whatever. It's not worth, because in 10 years, my kids will be without a father, right?
Yeah.
So that was a slow sort of process of me then thinking about, well, how am I going to extract myself from this? And it took me, I think, about 6 or 7 years to finally sort of make the transition. And so I've been sort of consulting, working for myself since 2017 now, just doing projects for big sort of clients, and which is good. There's some of them are still pretty stressful, but I don't have the headache of paying 10, 12 people's salaries. Yeah, that was a big
stressful,
big weight on my shoulders. So that's how I sort of cut a long story short, but it's sort of, again, health was the trigger.
Yep.
There's a famous, or sayings by Confucius are famous, but one of them, which I really enjoy, is, men have two lives. Have you heard that one? And they realize that the second one begins when they realize they only live once.
Yep.
It's fantastic, man. That's it's such a, there's so much in that, and you can sort of, everyone can relate to that. There's a moment in your life, maybe one or two, that you go, nah, this is, I've got to make some changes.
Yeah.
This ride's not going to last.
Yeah.
And coming back to what you were saying, you want to be able to sort of have a life that you're at peace.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. You want to get up. You don't want to go through life just constantly just putting out fires for whatever reason. If you can manage how to do that, I mean, you've made it.
Yeah.
All these things around us are just the distraction, to be honest.
Absolutely.
So that's, I guess, coming back to your question, that's how I ended up where I am. But it's funny, like, because you've got a martial arts background as well. You've been doing it for a long time, almost from a young age as well.
Yeah, from 5, basically.
I started a little bit later, judo. Back then, I used to train for what the clubs that were police boys clubs. They're called
PCYCs.
Yeah.
Yep.
But part of the old school thinking was that promotion required you to compete. You couldn't get promoted without competition, so the clubs really pushed comps, right? And at the end of the day, anxiety got to me. I couldn't compete. It was just too stressful. It's a shame. Look, I believe that competition is a big part of martial arts. I've had these discussions with many people, and I believe that you should try to push yourself to at least do it from time to time.
Yeah.
Because it's good for your development. But back then it was almost part of the training. You had to do it, and so I quit. I just couldn't handle the stress anymore. And it still resonates with me now. It's very hard for me to compete. I push myself through it and work it through, because I feel it's important that I do it for myself. But it's such a mind game for me that it's almost not worth it, because I burn so much energy trying to
in the anxiety.
Yeah. So it's, I can't weigh it up. I mean, I've just lost 2 weeks of my life, without proper sleep over a stupid fight that I'm going to have with one old guy, that no one watches and no one cares about. Or what do I get out of it? But at the end, I always get a lot out of it, win or lose. It's such a fantastic experience to go through.
Yeah. Well, I think when it comes to competing and challenging yourself, like at the end of the day, yes, it's nice when you win. It sucks when you lose.
Yeah.
But the only person that's growing as a result of it is yourself.
100%.
Right? And so I often take the view of there's a lot of people in this world who have involuntary suffering. They're born into a circumstance that isn't the most ideal. They're less fortunate than what we're so lucky to have here in Australia.
Probably majority of the world population, if you look at all the third world countries, I mean, it's we're very blessed.
Yeah. So from that perspective, we've got a choice.
Yeah.
Our choice is basically we can try and live a complacent life, without a comfortable life, so to speak, without much suffering. But I think, it's not very rewarding to have no suffering in life. You need to, whether it's voluntary or involuntary, obviously, if we're fortunate enough, you have voluntary suffering where you choose to put yourself in these difficult situations, not to destroy yourself, but to give yourself a challenge.
But it's the contrast analogy again, the black and white thing. Like you put yourself through it, and the relief of achieving something, right? Look, like I said, it's such a mind game for me, and when I speak about it, it sounds so trivial, because it's such a sort of a non-event for me to compete against another 50-year-old. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
what about it creates the anxiety? Is it the outcome? Like you
Not
overthinking the outcome, or
no, it's again, it's what other people think.
yeah,
And there's no words that you can say to me that will convince me otherwise. If it's me, if it's someone else, I'm giving advice, and they're telling me, "Oh, you know, I don't want to get tapped out in 10 seconds, or you know, I don't do something." I'd say, "Don't worry about it. I don't really care.
Yeah.
The fact that you're having a go is fantastic. Like,
mm.
that's the advice I'm giving you and others, right? When I have to look at myself and think that through, for some silly reason, it doesn't get through."
Mm.
But that's not that's a lifetime of just being sort of anxious and having all sorts of anxiety issues. It's the pressure of performing. It's really just the essence of all those years just compressed into one event, right? Because I don't have that at work. I mean, if you have to present something or I have to deliver something, I don't really stress out. I'm not anxious. Not always, obviously, but most of the time I can manage that. It's just this personal thing where it's people looking at me. Again, I'm in the spotlight. I feel very uncomfortable, but that's why I do it. I don't do it often, but I make a point of it at least a few times a year, one or two times, and it's good for me.
Out of curiosity, you know, and I often will use this line of thinking. You know, what is the difference between nerves and excitement?
In terms of how you, I guess, how you feel that in your body, or how you interpret that, because I think that's the point of difference. In your body, you might feel the same.
Yep.
So you might, the nerves and the excitement, wherever you feel it.
The butterflies.
Yeah, let's just call it like that. It's probably the same, but how you interpret that is totally different. Because excitement is you're looking forward to something. You're sort of anxious to do it. You know, you're preoccupied as well, but you've got a smile on your face, right? Whereas I think it's the opposite. It's preoccupying you in a negative way. It's the doubts are coming in.
Yeah,
like it's what happens in your mind that's different than the physical. The physical is probably the same, I'd say.
Yeah. So I often use that to help people that are first time competitors to say, you know, like, are you sure you're nervous or are you just excited? Right? Like, because you know, it's the same feeling.
Yeah.
And so for me, you know, when the lights are on, I love that. You know, it gives you well, for me anyway, it sort of allows me to find that another gear.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody's different, right? But for me, like, before I compete, I'll be sleeping, you know, literally like up until 10 minutes before it's showtime. And then when it's showtime, it's like, you know, boom, the lights are on, the atmosphere, everything sort of elevates you. And so that's sort of how I've always approached it in that sense. It's like, you know, rather than looking at it in a negative perspective and say, oh, I'm really nervous about this, or I'm really nervous about that, or have a lot of anxiety about it. I think a lot of anxiety comes from being overly attached to the outcome or what people might perceive as a result of that. Yeah. And it's like when you play the game though, like as an example, we take a team sport like basketball or football, right? Are the athletes worried about what's on the scoreboard, or are they worried about what are they actually doing on the court? Yeah. Right. And so for me, I think what's helpful is being really focused on an input-based approach as opposed to an outcomes-based approach, because the outcome is the outcome. I can't change whatever the outcome's going to be. It is what it is, right? But all I can change is being consciously competent in the moment. So if I'm playing a team sport like basketball, that might mean, okay, I want to make sure when I dribble the ball, I don't have any turnovers, right? I don't want to give the ball away for free. I want to make sure my passes are completed. I want to make sure if I'm shooting that I have take a high percentage shot or I chase a rebound, right? At possession, you know, like you look at all the stats that appear when you watch a team sport, even like in rugby league, you know, how many completed sets have they done? You know, how much ground do they make each set? All of these sort of metrics, they're all, yes, they're telling you the outcome, but at the same time, when the athletes are in the moment performing, they're focused on, okay, I need to run forward, I need to make this amount of ground, or I'm chasing to try and get to this amount of ground. It's the same thing when we compete. You know, if I focus on the outcome and go, oh yeah, like I don't want to get submitted, right? We've actually already focused on the wrong thing, because there's so many inputs that need to happen before you get submitted or you submit your opponent. So I think, thinking about outcomes it actually ties into how we're conditioned from when we're children. You'll probably recognize this, but when we usually tell our kids not to do something, it's because it's bad. It might hurt you, right? So straight away when we're kids, we're conditioned that things are either good or bad.
Yeah.
The problem is that mentality doesn't actually help us when we grow up. Because as an example, I got a speeding fine. Okay, that's bad, right? On the flip side, maybe you just avoided a massive car accident. That's
true.
Good.
That's
right?
true.
So, I got a promotion at work. Oh, that's good. I got fired from work. Oh, that's bad, right? But those things don't actually influence what we can actually do to improve our prospective chances in the future. They're outcomes. It's already happened.
Yeah.
Can't change it. But if I think about things in terms of action and consequence as opposed to good and bad, right? Well, what are the actions that I can take and that will influence my consequences? Because, and this is something that I picked up from Tim Ferriss. He had this one-liner, which was like, how am I complicit in the outcomes that I'm receiving, right? Complicit. And that's a really interesting word because it's taking into account that you are not in control of every single situation, but you are complicit in how you, in your actions that lead to that specific outcome. You may not be in 100% control of what's happened in that particular circumstance, but you've been complicit by your actions in terms of what you're willing to accept, right? So I take that, and I think that's a very valuable thing when it comes to any forms of competition. Even just like I do stupid things like, jump in the cold shower and do like 30 seconds of cold exposure at the end of every shower. I could have the warmer shower out there and then, just blast it straight to cold and do 30 seconds of, hardcore breath work to...
There's nothing stupid about that.
Well, it's I use it from that mental perspective that, if I'm competing, well, my chances are my opponent's not going to do that.
Yeah.
So mentally, I'm already one step ahead,
It's a very interesting. This topic, we can probably talk hours on this because it's really only this aspect of my life that really I'm trying to sort of improve and resolve. That still has this whole anxiety attached to it, right? I'm not saying that there's nothing else that I'm anxious about, but I feel for some unknown reason, like I've got these memories back when I was a kid competing judo, right? And how that sort of, I guess, led to my, early retirement, I should say. I wasn't too bad,
Yeah.
Looking back, it would have been fantastic if I continued. I was doing it from the age of 9. Who knows? But then again, looking at it like that, maybe I would have been injured pretty badly later on. And so you can't, these if then scenarios are...
It's a moot point.
It's really, you can't. So it is what it is. But it's something that I've spoken to a few people about. And it's something that I'm consciously working as a personal development thing for myself. Right? It's not gonna make me retire. I used to have the same problem when I used to cycle. You might have seen a bike when you walked in. I used to sort of locally race at these sort of short crits. It's the same thing. Your bike's worth thousands. You spend all this time and effort training, and then you go and race against these other people, and the prize money is $10, $15, right?
Yeah.
And you stress out, and you go, why do I get myself in this position where I'm not enjoying this? I should be enjoying this because I've just spent waking up 5 a.m, riding hundreds of kilometers to be here, right?
Yeah.
And so it's one of these things I still haven't sort of resolved, and it's getting there, but it's something that is still sort of like a residue of my life of just sort of being an anxious person that's sort of all bottled and compressed into this one thing that I have to sort of be there to to perform and be in the spotlight. I can't resolve that yet. It's okay. I've got time, but it's been interesting.
Can we just touch on one more thing before we finish up?
Sure.
I don't know if you're okay to talk about it, but we talked about when it came to anxiety, medication.
Yeah.
And you were telling me about how you know, when you take the medication, it sort of allowed you to see, one of the positives was that you could now see what life could be like.
Yeah.
One of the negatives was that you lost all empathy.
Yeah.
But can you elaborate on that? And
Yeah.
I think that's a great way to sort of.
No, that's fine. Look, I'm more than happy to talk about it because I think it's important. So I've always been an anxious person, and because of that, I've became conditioned to that feeling, right? So it wasn't like on and off; it was just constantly on.
Yep.
So over time, it sort of you just becomes part of your life. Now, again, coincidentally, I realized that I might have a condition that my son was being sort of, when he was really young, doctors were looking and saying, well, maybe he's got some, learning challenges. And he never did, but that he went through a period of some health issues as well. And that was one of them, was he had to see a doctor about his behavior or his development. And I was listening to all the questions and tests that I was doing, and I'm going, hang on, maybe I think it was something to do with ADHD or something like that, some attention disorder, right? And I always jump from one topic to another. I read about 10 books at the same time. Like if you look at the books that I'm reading, there's always about 10, 11 that I've got open, and I just never able to sort of just focus on one thing. Oh, maybe I've got this, right?
Yeah.
Of all this time, maybe I've discovered it through my son. And my son never had any issues. It was just a process that he had to go through. But then I thought to myself, well, maybe I should get checked out. So I went through the process of getting, because you can't, your doctor will ask you a few basic questions. And the simple question is, well, how's your life? Okay, I'm married, I've got kids, I've got a job. And they look at you and go, well, what's wrong? What's the problem? Well, yeah, okay. Well, if you put it like that, there's no problem. But I feel that there might be something there, right? So they sent me to see a psychiatrist, right? And same line of questions. Well, and it sort of makes you feel like a little bit guilty, because like I'm not here because for fun. I genuinely feel that
There's something wrong.
that there's something not right, Anyway, so a line of questions, and the guy goes, no, like you have mild anxiety. Like it wasn't something
that you're making up.
Yeah. I go, anxiety? You mean I don't have like ADHD or anything like that? He goes, no. I don't think you've got that, but I think you've got anxiety. I go, I don't have anxiety. I'm all right. I don't. And he goes, look, and explained to me these are the reasons why I think you've got that, right? These are the questions, the answers you've given me to these questions, and this is why I think you may have actually anxiety. And I go, oh, okay. That was like a bit of a light bulb moment. I go, okay. So he put me on this medication. I wasn't keen on going on that because it's like I don't want to be on meds, But I thought, okay, well, I've made all this effort. I've tried, and I've got to trust the process and the system. I'll take it, right? And so he's put me on a fairly low dosage, and like within days, like my life just changed. It was like a massive weight lifted off my shoulders, and obviously it had to do with the medication, but I was almost like I was happy again. And so that gave me an insight to this contrast of not being anxious for a moment, right? And so it was just an amazing feeling. And the problem was that it obviously just turned off a lot of the other things like empathy, right? It's just I really didn't care about. I was so easygoing. I was so laid back that you could tell me someone, passed away or had a bad accident, and I would just go,
yeah, cool.
It is what it is, man. Yeah.
Wow.
It was that bad. And so I was lucky enough that I was conscious of that, because some people, like, maybe they wouldn't have picked that up. And over time, you know, the dosages got a little bit higher because your body gets used to it. And so I kept taking it for a year, and then I made a decision that I needed to do something with myself again, but without the meds, right? And for anyone, obviously this is very important, for anyone that's taking any meds, psychiatric
medication.
You can't just stop.
Yeah.
It's very dangerous. So please.
Yeah, don't
do that. You've got to see a doctor, and you've got to wean yourself off it over time. So just want to make sure that no one does that. But yes, I came off it, and look, what that gave me was this contrast of what it's like to be not anxious. And so I immediately recognized when I was anxious, and sometimes for good reasons. It's normal to be anxious about things. But if you remain, in that state chronically, like all the time, that's no good. And so that gave me a bit of an insight, and so that took me on a path to sort of meditation and just trying to understand what's really driving the anxiety, and largely I'll be able to manage that. I've only been on the meds for 12 months, and this was about 7 years ago that I came off it. Right? So it's been good. I encourage people to take that option if they're struggling. I think it's very important that not all medication is evil, and the big pharma conspiracies are not always they're not always true. Genuinely, these medications do help, but I think that if there's a path that you can take to be med free, obviously that's beneficial. All meds have side effects. There's no free lunch with that sort of stuff. So, and I was very lucky enough that I was able to sort of manage that that transition process. And I'll be honest, I think if I couldn't, I'd go back to some sort of level of meds, to manage that. But so there's so many sort of lessons learned from that. And again, that I was in my mid-40s when I realized this. So all this life that I've been sort of living till this point, it's been sort of under high stress and anxiety that came from somewhere. I don't know where. And I was able to sort of, by coincidence again, pick it up and ultimately almost resolve it. There's a few little things that still need to manage. That's why I love training so much jiu-jitsu, because it really challenges that anxiety. When I first started training at grappling education, I was saying this to Keller. I was actually anxious getting there.
Yeah.
Let alone just doing the training. It was just the anxiety of getting there and looking around at all these people that are so good at this sport. That for me just to get there was a bit of a win. Over time, I obviously overcame that, but it's little things like that people don't know. You turn up, you smile, you say hello, and no one even thinks twice that this person might be sort of going through some hardship. It's incredible how we almost mask it, because we're either ashamed or we don't want to talk about it, or we think that other people don't care or don't want to listen. You make up all these stories, really. But I'm sure if I spoke up to someone, 99% of people would have just said, man, it's all good.
Yeah.
Gave you a hug and move on.
Yeah.
We don't do that enough. We don't speak up.
Yeah.
Sort of comes back full circle again to this heart sort of thing where someone spoke up and said, listen, go and get yourself sorted. And it's very important message, man.
All right. I think that's a great way to end this. Thanks everyone.
Thank you very much. This was really, really good. It's very therapeutic.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did. Thanks for having me.